What up, though? Welcome to Commute Chronicles. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Just getting off work. Y'all know how it is. So, I'm basically gonna get ready to get on my commute and turn somebody on so we can listen to them on the way home. So yeah, there's a lot of shit going on in the world, y'all. A lot of shit going on in the country, let alone the world. I hope everybody doing all right. Staying safe out here, keeping your head on a swivel, and don't be a soft target. These folks is trying us out here, y'all. Like, for real. Okay, let me see. It's hot. It is hot in Michigan. 85 degrees today. Not as hot as it was a couple of weeks ago, though, because we did reach the 100s. That's for damn sure. Okay, who am I trying to listen to? There was somebody I was trying to listen to specifically. I wanted y'all to hear. Oh, there we go. Yep, that's what I wanted. Okay. I'm so glad to be off work. God damn. How's y'all supermarkets looking in your areas? Please drop a comment below so we can let our comrades and peers and friends and family can see what's going on across the country.
Solidarity. The sign says, "No sex with men until Roe v. Wade is protected." So a lot of these protests in Los Angeles are blocking traffic, and it's like, don't they know that they're going to be stopping a lot of people trying to get to their abortions? It's like you guys are shooting yourselves in your feet with that one. Alright, so let's see who's in the chat. Thanks everyone for joining again. I sent out notifications, not via text, because I don't know if we're taking calls. So I'm trying to maintain text alerts only for doing open phones. I actually wanted to do some other things tonight. For one, there's been a lot of talk lately about the idea of a false flag. Do we call it a false flag? Do we call it a hoax? And what I've been working on is systematizing this information and providing something of a methodology. So what we have is an ebook. I just released it, Auto Hoaxology 101, the false flag fallacy. And I think it explains everything in the simplest, not simplest necessarily, but the most concise and accurate of terms. So for example, make a distinction between MSM viewers, that is mainstream media, believers, just MSM. Then you have MSM plus, which are people who believe the news, but they think there's more to the story, as in the conspiratorial view. So yeah, the buildings fell, but it wasn't Muslims, it was space lasers. So that would be the additional narrative attached to the official story. Slightly deviates, but it doesn't undermine or call it a outright hoax. Now those who say nobody died, nobody cried, it's all fake, those are the ones in the category of MSM minus, because you're subtracting what can't be verified. So MSM, MSM plus, MSM minus. And who's doing it right? Well, philosophically, if you're shifting the burden of proof onto the person making the claim, and there's no evidence, especially when there's some obvious agenda behind the news reporting, then I think you should shift it on the person with the claim. And if there's no blood, you don't have to believe it. And that's another point I make here is, are you a media believer, or do you know? There's a big difference. Anyway, thanks for joining 737 AJ206 Clockwork 113, joined by Eat My Shorts. Look, I turned D-Live back on because I don't want to leave people out. We know they're a horrible company and they can't pay their bills, but I'm not going to punish people who join our think tank. So if you didn't know, D-Live is falling apart. Zinvalis, Ready or Not 31 says, is this live? Yes, this is time to feed the penguins. And I had to fix something here. If you notice in the chat, you can't use the letter J. And I did that as a joke because we had some sensitive Nazi snowflakes. So I did it just to mess with them, but I'll put it back because people are finding it to be confusing. Maxwell Cooper has joined us, Salty Siren, Osher, Zareth the Alchemist, Canaman, Lean Dion. Lean Dion says the original Roe v. Wade was a leak script too. Yeah, the leak, obvious, there's an obvious meaning to that. Such a setup. And watching people play into it. I mean, I have videos, I don't want to get into it necessarily, but of protesters basically going nuts, but it's interesting to watch because I think they've tapped into something very deep. Like, I think that behind the gun grab is some basic insecurity. Behind the push for mandatory vax is, again, they're tapping into insecurities. I think this is why people are prone to believe things like global warming, some kind of primal fear of the sky or something kind of programmed into us. My point being, when they're coming for your guns, I think on some level, some Freudian level, people feel like they're going to be, castrated or something by the government. Like on some level, yeah, they're coming for your gun has a deeper meaning. It's about control, it's about power. And so, on the other side of the fence, now it's coming for your womb. And I think the womb versus gun thing is very interesting. Because each party wants to control the other party. And the party of pro-vax doesn't want any kind of mandate on their bodies when it comes to this. And some people see it as hypocrisy. I see it as mutually exclusive, but there's mutual interest there. Both sides should agree that they don't like big government overreach, and yet each side makes certain concessions. So it's such a clown show. And it's predictable, and it's midterm. But as you can see, this is exactly what we were discussing, how this whole Kraken was ultimately going to be about the fringes, about each side, and taking these extremes, and then driving the wedge deeper with psychological operations like we've been seeing non-stop. So let me go through my notes as well. Bob Sapp says, I made a t-shirt. On the front is Osama bin Laden, and it says, greatest terrorist that never existed on the back. I like that. I would wear that. Fepe Akbar. We have some... I like some of the stuff. The whole terrorist thing, the myth is, now it's just that. It's a myth. They've replaced it. Have you noticed how they phased out Islamic terrorism when they brought in COVID? And then, of course, Putin came along and cured COVID. And then Chris Rock got slapped in the face by Will Smith, and that cured Putin. And what came next? And then, of course, we had the leak at the Supreme Court, and so this is the new thing you're supposed to be plugged into. But, sure, this whole thing with terrorism is interesting, how it's just gone. It's like, what happened to Osama bin Laden or his replacement? Where are the bomb belts and the people blowing up? And in 2020, I was saying, they replaced Allah Akbar. You hear that, you jump on the ground because someone's going to blow up. They replaced that with like someone sneezing on you. It's like, oh, get down. They're going to spread COVID. And they replaced the paranoia. So now you're afraid of the super spreader. And why is he a super spreader? Oh, that's because the QAnon verses radicalized him. So instead of Quran verses radicalizing people, necessitating Guantanamo lockdowns, now it's QAnon verses, making them into anti-vaxxers. And of course, the enemy of the QAnoner, the Great Satan, is the same enemy of the Quran, radical. So they just replaced the domestic terrorist about to explode with they replaced the alien threat with the domestic threat. But they really did replace the suicide bomber, I would say, with the incel. And these incel shooters were radicalized. Again, these narratives are interchangeable, is my point. So, when I look at someone suggesting they have an Osama bin Laden on their shirt, it's like, yeah, I mean, to me it's all fair game, it's all just memes. And we're probably paying for the propaganda in some roundabout way. Okay, so Zared says, we're still waiting on the unsealing of those 65,000 indictments. Okay, so when I first heard about the indictments, it was by one of the first QAnon radicals to try to radicalize me. And he was like, they're going to unseal the indictments. We'll know who's guilty, and they'll be punished in front of everybody, judged. And then we'll have a great awakening, new technology, life extension, all your debts forgiven. And I'm like, wait, Trump, the guy that signs Bibles, is bringing this? And QAnon says it. So it started to occur to me that the Trump campaign had used the script of Revelation as a backdrop, as a manuscript, you could say, for their campaign, where it involves the opening of seals, judgment, revelation, and of course this Savior. And then it gets weirder because then you find out that Q has some interesting connotations with regard to the formation of a new religious cult. You see, in their belief, Q is based on this notion that the Kennedys are fighting the holy war against the deep state, but it's all undercover. They didn't really die. And the Kennedys are the bloodline of Christ. So now you actually have the second coming literally connected to the Great Awakening. And then it gets even more interesting when you find that the oral tradition that became the Gospels was more or less considered to be what they call the Q source. So there's even a perfect analog here where you got the Q source, you got the revelation, they're waiting for their Savior. Anyway, it's all 100% intentional, and it's scripted, and it is definitely a new religion. And all this is more interesting to me considering how General Flynn is clearly connected with some heavy New Age influences. He's one of their major thought leaders, this General Flynn. So you got this New Age influence, which is in itself kind of intriguing because it ties into this doomsday cult that went into bunkers in the 90s. So you got that, you got the Christian thing with the Kennedys coming back. The Q source, of course, is back, and in the last couple of days we talked about this. After 2 years, nearly 2 years, Q is back. Now, those of you listening know that he's been posting at George News in between, but for people not in the know, he's been quiet this whole time. But I'm not going to spend too much time on that. It is interesting to see that people are digging, though. Salty Siren says, tribunals. Okay, yeah, that's the other part of it. So, when they open the sealed indictments, here's your judgment day, here's your Great Awakening. See, they want the Great Awakening, which is a reset. They don't want the Great Reset. You know, one's it's like there's a liberal and a conservative, I guess, version of this Great Reset. Each side involves the elimination of the other side, which is convenient. But on the case, let's say Trump is, of course, an agent of the second coming of Jesus and his son, the third coming of Jesus, JFK Jr. So JFK Jr. comes back, changes his political affiliation from Democrat to Republican, and becomes Trump's running mate. But what then? Well, then the Republicans, who are in the know, all the QAnoners, execute all of the Democrats and the deep state traitors. So not only this, but they're going to use this is how you know it's revelation. You know how the face of Christ will appear to everybody? Well, in this case, the face of Trump will appear to everybody. Every single device, every screen, every smartphone, every single device will be hijacked with this emergency message, this emergency broadcast message. So this is your message from basically God, and no one's going to miss the signal. And for 10 days straight, you're going to be watching Hillary Clinton with frazzled drip running around with a mask made from the skin of a sacrificed child. And then you're going to see all the executions nonstop. You're going to see the military and the white hats killing the bad guys. It's going to be like the French Revolution. They just want to see a bunch of people die. And they try to paint it up like, no, we're the good guys, we're the white hats, but it's like, no, you're going to be the red hats by the time this is done. Because their whole revelation scheme is based on killing the opposition. So, and you can say they deserve it. And supposedly, what we're going to be shown on our TV screens is so bad that we're going to ask for them to be executed. And we're told just to stay home and eat the popcorn. So, the Q narrative is revelation, and it's very partisan, and that is the basic story. those are the tribunals. Okay, Maxwell Cooper says, it's very telling that the MSM and the government have zero interest in doxing him. Oh yes, I've been feeding information to people who would know what to do with the information, and they all seem disinterested, and I'm not quite sure why that is. Maybe they're just vetting the information. Maybe the guy's protected. So part of this whole story with this Q guy is that before he was working as QAnon, he was going by the name MGTV, and he was, in that capacity, the person who was behind somehow hijacking YouTube's algorithm and getting his video, which was doxing David Hogg as an actor, to be the #1 trending video on YouTube for 12 hours. He did that. That was this person before he changed his identity to this first moniker. So anyway, his name was searchable. You could find him in all these articles, because he was the guy who's credited with starting the whole crisis actor conspiracy theory with Parkland. Like, he's the main person who started it. But as soon as I started exposing him, because we had a trademark dispute, as soon as I doxed him, well, suddenly his name started disappearing from these articles, weirdly. From Vice, New York Times, I can point out all the articles where that little segment has been deleted. So I don't know if somebody's being paid or some kind of hacking, but it does seem like on some level he's got some kind of protection. So I'm mostly relying upon the hatred that left-leaning journalists have for Trump, and also the possible greed to do my work for me here. Because the fact is, this person who's involved in a trademark dispute with me inadvertently actually forwarded me some emails. He forwarded a couple of emails that went to YouTube's legal and their trademark department, where he actually admitted to identity theft and admitted how he did it. And it was part of a strategy where he claimed trademarks to seize control over my podcasts on YouTube. And he's one of the ones who helped keep me off of the platform. So anyway, I have enough there. Like, it's definitely felony identity theft, and YouTube's complicit. This is part of a lawsuit that's ongoing. I'll hear more about it soon. But the main point of it is that somebody close to Trump, close enough to polish Trump's shoes, is indictable on felony identity theft. I think that's a big story. And you throw in the fact that this guy is connected to Ron Watkins, Jim Watkins, the guy suspected of being Q, the ones who have been proven to have somehow managed to pretend to be Q, or they're connected to Q. But these last two Q drops really put them in the crosshairs. So hopefully they throw Goldfinch, MGTV under the bus, and he becomes a public figure. So I'm thinking, yeah, maybe he's covering his tracks, but you have to remember, it's a midterm, election cycle. People are crazy right now, and anything they can find to throw at foes, you become a prayer warrior. So I'm like, okay, what's with all these portals? And then I'm watching Man in the High Castle, based on some Philip K. Dick books, and it's basically about portals and going into the alternate realities in this multiverse. Interesting stuff, but I'm seeing that word tossed out a lot, and it's appearing more and more. So it's kind of interesting that, yes, July 5th, CERN, which is some kind of altar to the horned earth god Cernunnos, some kind of pagan deity. I mean, supposedly they're doing something with particle physics, but I don't know. I've only seen witchcraft. What do you know about this place? But my point is, yeah, they're turning it on. And what is it with their logos? I mean, 666, it's so dang obvious. They don't even try to hide it. Okay, so I'm not really all that interested in this topic or any of these topics, but I was just thinking about where is reality going? Meatverse and metaverse. And this is kind of part of the Autohoaxology 101 ebook, which I'll read the introduction. But basically I've been thinking about this idea of there's got to be a point where fake meets real, and there's got to be some kind of friction. Like, reality cannot just continue to capitulate, to give in. The world's going to become essentially a bedlam, an open-air insane asylum. And in some ways it seems to be like Brave New World, a big insane asylum, people disconnected from reality or something. So I was thinking, well, let's look at objective standards. And objective standards would say, in the military, for example, that it would matter that there are differences enough to where you have it built into the system. It's assumed that males do more push-ups and females do more sit-ups. So I'm like, well, that's something that can't change, can it? And so, well, it turns out that the House Armed Services Committee markup of the Annual Defense Authorization Bill calls for the Secretary of the Army to, quote, establish gender-neutral fitness standards for combat military occupational specialties. So, here I'm just thinking, wait, what does that mean other than lower the standards for males? And that's not a sexist comment. I'm just saying you can't change the center of gravity on someone who's born this or that gender. You can't. There's certain things that just can't be altered. But they're going to make it change. Interesting. So I'm just saying, it's just interesting. Simulations take it over. Reality just capitulates. And this kind of ties into it. This is a meme. Has a cats and dogs with time machines. And so the Egyptian cat, is basically being told by the modern cat, humans still work for us. And the dog with the time machine is like, help, I can't breathe. And the ancient dogs, like the wolf, says, what is that? Not even recognizing it as part of the same species. And my point being, the domesticated dog, compared to the wolf, is to me an example of something. I'm just kind of comparing how insulated people are these days, to where they can afford to be completely divorced from reality. Alright, let's see. I'm going to open up phones here momentarily. 833-311-1984. Tominoid says, Donnie Darko Portals, Doctor Strange, Portals, Stranger Things, Gate, and Portals. Yeah, and I think there's one called Dark, where there's a time machine portal that sends you back in 33-year increments. So, yes, there's something going on with portals. Fascinating. And you know what? I don't think it's separate from the fact that the Billionaire Blimp Club, for as much as they pretend like they're sending things up, are actually digging. You got the boring drilling company from Elon Musk. Richard Branson has his Hyperloop, his Virgin Galactic Hyperloop. So the Hyperloop thing is really nothing more than, to me, preparation for what comes next. Because we know that the way they describe space travel, we know that's a hoax. But what isn't a hoax is the Hyperloop, or deep underground military bases. You combine the two, and you have simulated space travel. And people say, well, space travel in the movies doesn't work that way. It's a long distance, takes a long time. And it's like, well, no, you haven't heard about the space manifolds, the celestial autobahns, the arcs of chaos, where apparently they can calculate a path that will send your craft rapidly across the galaxy. So space travel is actually going to feel exactly, coincidentally, like the Hyperloop. Rudy and the Dog says, dogs are a gift to mankind. Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm not knocking dogs, I was just bringing up the meme. Nothing against, real dependent dogs that shudder when they hear the thunder and everything else. So look at the screen, you have a comparison of NASA and Walt Disney's little sparkle of light in their graphics. This one here, of course, is from their website. It shows a rocket. It goes on an arch, probably plops back down to the ocean, but you wouldn't know because they cut to a different scene. And it's being compared to the sparkle arch of light that goes over the Walt Disney Castle. And the interesting thing here is you can't really separate Disney from NASA. Werner von Braun, of course, BFFs with Walt Disney. And I brought up Musk a moment ago. Elon Musk is actually a composite character comprised of part von Braun, and his whole character as a Mars colonizer comes out of von Braun's book called Mars, A Technical Tale. But Musk is a combination of von Braun, Willy Wonka, and Tony Stark. I don't know what he was working with originally, but this is what they do. They provide us with these composites. Zerat says, I think all animals are messengers who incarnate to support our existence or be our spiritual companions. Anima means spirit. Interesting. Alright, next. Going through my list of memes. I have so many great memes on my Minds account. So this is something, I'm not going to play it, but there was this raging person really mad about the possibility of having to drive to another state to get a procedure done, where she rages and screams at the camera. And I was just thinking, we've been seeing a lot of this type of rage, and I'm not trying to minimize the rage. To me, what I'm looking at here, it's fascinating because you notice how on 6/11 we were seeing all this buildup of this Kraken thing we've been describing, how it ties into the predictive programming in Batman and Stranger Things. But if you go back, the whole Kraken thing started in 2020 with Sidney Powell, and of course the election 11/3. And by the way, 11/3 is Godzilla's actual birthday. Just an interesting, relevant fact here. But I noticed at the time that there was a hyper-focus in the media on Karens. Like, suddenly Karens existed. And they kind of went away. But for a time, there was a lot of these Karens. I'm like, is there some correlation here between this Karen thing and the Kraken, and maybe we're looking at some kind of manifestation of this? Because I'm suggesting here is, again, a split, a schism, a crack in our society along ideological lines, and it's being highlighted. And then you have certain exemplars of this crack and of this split, where you can see people losing their minds. And we'll see and hear, obviously, more of it as we go along. Oh, by the way, space is fake. We don't spend a lot of time dwelling in the shape of the world. Most of us here know what it's not. Doesn't mean we know what it is. But I had high expectations that the Chinese space station would be better than the American one. And when they knocked the American one down, maybe it was just kind of a way of advancing their so-called technology, just where it's like, okay, we have better special effects, but we gotta distance ourselves from these green screen effects. But anyway, no, the Chinese put no effort into their space station at all. And what's worse, they get some very basic things wrong. So, for example,
Hi. Good afternoon, all students.
what you're looking at here is a group of astronauts. This is the Chinese space station, and they're going to talk to some students. And you'll notice that one of the astronauts has a glass of water in a mason jar, and the water in the jar is somehow magically sticking to that table, almost like they're, I don't know, on Earth.
Students on Earth, I'm Jia Zhigang, I'm the commander. Good afternoon, my name is Ye Guangfu.
The standard cup will not work in a weightless environment. The cup that we're all used to drinking. Oh, yes, yeah, a standard cup like this does not work in a weightless environment. It requires gravity.
So this is Don Petit saying, your standard cup does not work in that environment. It would not work.
We're all used to drinking. Oh, yes, yeah, a standard cup like this does not work in a weightless environment. It requires gravity to hold the food in the bottom of the cup.
Uh-oh.
There you have it. So anybody who has any lingering doubts about what we're saying regarding the space stations and are they faking space, but this is yours. This is your evidence. This is your source of authority. It's on the screen. So to me, this is self-debunking. This is an impossibility. How do you explain it? There is no way to explain it. I mean, maybe, no, never mind. There is no way to explain it. It's a contradiction. So I'm going to leave that up on the screen. Okay, again, I'm going to open up the phones, 833-311-1954. Just your daily reminder that space is still fake. Okay, so let's see here. Trust the plan. It's Kennedy. Oh yeah, Kennedy Sunday. Every Sunday, the JFK worshippers actually tweet pictures of the Kennedys. It is, to me, it is just beyond bizarre. Like people who watch Friends, like season 1, all over again from the beginning. Like, let it go. Like, this is in the past. It's not coming back. This is pretty bad. Kennedy Sunday, they are quite literally enamored with baby pictures of John F. Kennedy Jr. That's one of the strangest things I've seen yet. But anyway, I'm not quite sure where it's going. Got a nice email from somebody regarding a similar story to the suspicious death of Isaac Cappy. May touch on that. Again, apparently in Japan it's a big holiday. They all celebrate Godzilla's birthday on 11/3, a date heavily associated with the Kraken, with Seattle being taken down by the Kraken, and with something from beneath the water, possibly some nuclear submarine like that in Hunt for Red October. But in much of the predictive programming, you have this date tied in with this idea of this subterranean entity rising to the surface and wrecking things. And interestingly enough, Godzilla vs. King Kong has Godzilla beneath the ground at sub-level 33. Steve says, how can it be hot or cold in space if there are no molecules around? Interesting question. Talk about the hypothetical environment of outer space. There are usually good answers to these questions. They require that you accept one premise or another. Isabella Cryptus says, in case no one mentioned it, Kanye is an alien and Starman Fallen Angel in a Katy Perry song. Okay, so I recall that video from the past. I think, didn't Kanye have like deer legs or something? I may check that out tonight, so I'll put that in my notes. Okay, let's see. Oh, we have some comments from Discord. One Eye Jacket said, monkeypox is hilarious. I see people wearing masks around here to avoid it. And my point here, when I see people walking around with masks, I just think that they're brave. Like, think about it. If you actually believed that being around strangers could cause your face to break out in boils, your skin to just erupt in this pox, would you go around those people? It's like leprosy. I mean, you talk about a real significant condition. So if you're going out with a sock on your face, you're just brave. That's all we can say about you. Because if I believe that was the case, I would be home. And that raises another point. If you believe in any of the science, you would stay home. The climate, you would stay home for any number of things. Like, I was actually thinking about this. I saw some article about some climate protesters being arrested for blocking freeways and stuff, and it's like, you know what? Jail's greener. You go to jail, you're not going to have as big a carbon footprint. You're not going to be buying stuff. You're not going to be driving. So I'm like, yeah, go to jail. If you're a climate, what do you call yourself? I'm not going to say alarmist, but yeah, it is something of an end times religion. Climate protesters who blocked the Sydney Harbor Tunnel could face 2 years in jail. So think about how much difference. Like, they ought to take this opportunity. And don't even write letters. Don't even use anything. Just reflect. That's kind of what they're getting people to do. They want you to adopt a very ascetic lifestyle. Okay, so let's continue going through our notes here. So again, this is just a reference. Future, 4/18, 2017, masks off. 4/18, 2022, Judge Muzzle, masks off. So Future, again, is someone who goes by the name Pluto as well, behind the production of the Dawn Day 2 event, which is just, I guess you'd say, an inauguration to the return of Pluto, or Hades. Very interesting event, which we follow. Again, Hades releases the Kraken. But there are some connections here. Of course, the synchronicity of masks coming off ties into it. Also, the judge, she was criticized for having been appointed at such a young age, only 33. And she's the one who said masks off, and her name is basically Muzzle. But I checked out the video just to see, is there anything in here that we might find maybe portentous? And here's what I think. The premise of the song seems to be, of course, post-reset, things are burning down, probably a forecast of what's about to come this summer. Because the idea is, you put your masks on because this is pre-COVID. Because you're going to engage in criminal activity, or what, you don't want to be caught. But then the next part is masks off, meaning, I think, like gloves off, 1, and 2, there aren't going to be any consequences. No need to try to cover your face. This is the end. Like, very ominous, I think, is the message here. And so I'm just predicting that masks off having just been released, or rather the masks just been having been pulled, all the mandates pulled, ties into this song. One other thing about the song's release date, I think there might be some other significance to it. Significance has to do with the number. So April 18th, I believe, is the date. Got to double check it. Yes. So 4/18 is a date strongly associated with the Great Work. So the book that describes the Great Work, so the Great Reset is really just another way of describing the Great Work of the New Age, burning down the old age, bringing in the new. And the Book of the Law, which is the Bible of the New Age occultists of the OTO, it actually goes by the name 4/18. So that number has some significance, tying specifically in to burning down the old age. So masks off, interesting person behind it as well. Want to bring this up. There's a picture floating around of Nancy Pelosi with one of her eyes drooping, and people laugh. They say she's drinking. I don't even think she drinks. I think that's a rumor. But the fact is, she's giving the same one eye winky expression that Justin Bieber was giving. Probably not a coincidence. I'm not exactly sure what it means, but I don't believe these people are damaged. I don't think that this is a result of hokey. I think it's more occult than that. Alright, let us move on. Going through my mind's account. Just trying to catch up. There's so many things to catch up on. Again, I watched the Elvis movie. I did a breakdown. It's on my newsletter. I endured it. Appreciate everybody who pitched in on the popcorn and the chocolate-covered raisins. It's a biopic. So you're watching an Elvis impersonator doing the Michelle Obama, way too much in the movie. I don't know. I don't want to be too critical of it, but it's really from the perspective of Tom Hanks' character. And my take on it was, you're actually looking at a man selling his soul to the devil, and you're watching him fall. It's fascinating, though. It is fascinating. I just don't think it's the final word. It's not. I don't know. We'll see. Because again, if it's a biopic, it's a biopic. Then there was something missing. But it did bring in some interesting pieces, and I have a book on Elvis Presley that I'm looking through now. Okay, let us continue. 737 says, Dad Prez has a Black Star album out this year. Right, fascinating. And OTO is the Ordo Templi Orientis. That is the group, the New Age group that I think you could say really defines this great work thing, the Great Reset, the Green World Order. The whole idea of a New Age has been codified by this book, more or less. So, Crowley was a big name in this, as was Jack Parsons. So, we're also looking at something of a, I guess you could call it, it's quasi-Masonic, is what you would say. So it's not specifically Masonic, it's more occultic and based on magic, but same thing, just much deeper. Much more into the New Age, openly, blatantly New Age, rather than, whereas Masonic's more Judeo-Christian in its symbolism. So instead of a Bible, they use this supposedly channeled book, this book of the law. Okay, so let's continue. So many interesting little tangents here. Creator Knows brought this one up. He said, did you hear about the banking scam that involved the father of Adam Lanza and the father of James Holmes? And yes, I have some info on that. The True Face. No, there's a book that Elvis Presley was reading when he died. Someone was asking about it. His whole life story is scripted. And this has been referenced by JL26's channel many times. I think it was called Search for the Face of Jesus. Very interesting movie, I would say, but again, it's long. It's 3 hours long. I did a deep review, and I'll go through some of the major points, though. There were a lot of things in the movie that stood out as very symbolic and relevant to the things that we talk about, because there's a certain, I guess you could say there's an icon that's been created, and it's a fallen savior, or a man from, or a savior from above, a heavenly savior. And just looking at the storyline of Elvis and how it merges with Kanye West and David Bowie, you have these synonymous characters with synonymous symbolism, iconography, part of the same body of symbols. I'm thinking, this is the elite occult religion and its worship of this pageantry and these celebrity idols. But when you break down the symbols, you can see, yeah, there's something here beyond just entertainment. Okay, so again, I'm going through my Minds account. So if you missed this, in 2020, there was a guillotine placed in front of Jeff Bezos' home. Protesters set up a guillotine outside Bezos' mansion and demand higher wages for Amazon workers. The communists. This is fascinating, though, how this was before 1/6. Like, I didn't see anybody at the 1/6 guided tour lugging around guillotines. So it just shows you this incredible double standard. But it's good to know what people are capable of. Of course, the mob has been set loose, and it's going to do whatever it's paid to do. Again, QAnon has returned after 2 years. It's making the rounds right now, and all signs point to it being Ron Watkins or his dad, Jim Watkins. Again, Ron Watkins and Jim are part of a documentary on HBO about Q. So it's one of them or someone really close to them. Violent Shadow says, the scientific face of Jesus. Yeah, exactly. Why would they have him reading that? Well, again, it's part of this bigger story. So if you didn't read the Q drops, and I understand they're pointless, they really are. I mean, when somebody asks a provocative question and they expect me to do the work, I'm like, no thanks. I'm not going to do your work for you, tell me, or I'm not going to pay attention. So Q says, shall we play a game once more? So now you're supposed to hang out on 8chan and just refresh your browser, waiting for him to give you another clue about when Hillary Clinton's going to be arrested. It's like, I don't care about Hillary Clinton. I don't care about 99% of the things that Q is about. Besides, Q says that the Earth isn't flat, so I already don't trust him. But anyway, he says, shall we play a game once more? And I'm thinking, it's like a puzzle. This is like some kind of a twisted game. Who starts off with, do you want to play a game? And somehow it involves you having your limbs gone off at some point. Zara says that Hillary Clinton Greta face is hilarious. Oh, I didn't know that was Hillary. Yeah, we have a meme here. Again, if you follow on our Discord, you would find all these, and you're free to take them. Memes are free. Get in the Discord server, infiniteplainsstudy.com. You get in the server, you get access to all of our cutting-edge research, and the memes are free. $2 a month cover charge. You save if you pay for a full year, but generally we don't kick people out unless they're like heavily Mandela affected to the point where they can't function without being rude to everybody. But as you can see here, this is Greta in 2065. It's not actually a Hillary Clinton meme, but I can see where you arrived at that. And she says we only have 1 month to save the world. And it's kind of funny that this came up because I got some memes of Greta, some pictures of her recently where the child actress is gone, and the act needs to mature, and it hasn't. It just doesn't look right anymore. Like she's at that weird phase, like where Macaulay Culkin was the pizza thing. Her nemesis, I guess. See, Kyle Rittenhouse and Greta Thunberg were both born January 3rd, 2003, which should tell you something. They were both conceived at the same unholy rite or something. But whatever the case, they represent the extremes of the factions. And Kyle comes out with some ridiculous game where you get to play Kyle shooting turkeys, which represent people in the news media. So you get to play out Kyle's murder fantasy, his revenge fantasy, in a video game. It's like both of them are super cringe at the moment. Twin Flames, says Zareth the Alchemist. Yeah, I've been describing it as like it's a two-headed bird. Okay, so Elvis biopic symbolism, I will go through that. And if you didn't know, because there were some birds aren't real conspiracy people in the news recently, the people behind Birds Aren't Real are actually affiliated with Parkland. So think about this. Critical thinkers know Parkland was a big theatrical production. Those of you who are part of this Keeping Up with the Crisis Actors know and appreciate the Government Actors Guild, the GAGs. They can't make it in Hollywood, and so they found another niche. And so here we are just watching these actors over the years, and they know that we're right. So what do? They try to discredit us. How? First they say that we're hateful. Then they said that the crisis actor accusation is racist, which didn't make sense looking at Parkland. So what they settled on is you're crazy, or you can't tell the difference between real and fake. So what they did is, and talking about the Parklanders created the Birds Aren't Real conspiracy movement. But Cameron Kasky is one of the guys from the Parkland, one of the co-survivors. He said, yeah, basically they created the parody to make school shooting deniers look crazy. So that's weird to me. It's like that's damage control. Okay, so Elvis biopic symbolism breakdown. And Zareth, you're correct. Elvis, the king who died on the throne. Age 42, same birthday as David Bowie. Again, DB42. When you get into the symbolism, it shows you how this is a web. Okay, so again, movie just came out on the 24th. The number 24 is very significant in this as well. The symbol of Saturn, it can be derived from that, the actual astrological symbol from the 2 and the 4. Also, 24 and 42 interchangeably have much to do with this character and what he represents. He represents L, Saturn, all connected. One of the first things about it is it opened up with a trailer for a movie called Black Adam. Now, Black Adam is starring The Rock. So right away, and when I go to these movies, I always look at the trailers because they put all the same programming there as well. But right away, what stands out is Rock, and the symbolism with the Rock is something we cover quite a lot. But specifically, the lightning bolt and the Rock have some significance. And then he falls from the sky. This character in the movie, he flies. He's basically a savior. So you have a savior, lightning bolt, and a rock. These connections tie in, of course, to many of the other things that we talk about. In fact, at the very beginning of the Elvis movie, shows him as a child wearing a lightning bolt around his neck. Also, there are some interesting connections here with the International Hotel, among other things. There's a structure in front of it, a 3-columned Space Needle-like structure without the top. Incredible connections here. We may get into this, but I'll say this, because Jurassic Liars has been talking about the significance of Elvis and this character as being more or less how they're selling the public on the Antichrist, is how he's explained it. And he's connected this to the whole mark of the beast. So interestingly enough, the movie starts out where, and this is bizarre, okay, because the movie starts out where Elvis is passed out in the hallway in a purple suit, and in order to wake him up, they have to shoot him up with something. So the movie starts out with, again, color purple, the fallen king. Again, purple is always associated with Easter, the purple cloth of Christ. For the 3 days he's dead before he comes back. So here Elvis is symbolically dead, the fallen king. Then they bring out the syringe, and then they inject him, so he's saved, he's brought back to life. And my contention is that the needle has been turned into a symbol of salvation. And it's very significant that Elvis took the needle on TV on none other than Bill Gates' first birthday. So baby Bill Gates, on his first birthday, was watching Elvis likely taking the shot. But the idea here, of course, ties into the icon, the symbol, the savior symbolism, tied in to this vaccination. But what's more is I've connected the salvation symbol of the needle to the Space Needle, to the obelisk, which are synonymous. These are the same symbols. The Space Needle is a New Age obelisk, a symbol of the resurrected Savior, which is what he represents, the Phoenix. That's why you have the purple, represents the Phoenician. So the purple, the Phoenix, the resurrected Savior, resurrected by the injection, ties into the symbol, of course, of this object in front of the International, where at the very beginning, they have this interesting montage where it looks like an unfinished Space Needle, like it's waiting for the actual saucer to be put into place. And again, the Space Needle is a UFO. It is stylized to be a UFO. And again, we're talking about a savior from above. And so the modern savior from above would be some kind of an alien. That's kind of been this idea we've been sold with this New Age. And so here you have Elvis at the very beginning of the movie. He takes the shot, and in the montage, they have this 3-pillared structure in front of the International, but they actually have the Starship Enterprise in front of it, which creates the completed Space Needle structure. And then, of course, the montage has Elvis apparently descending in this UFO-like structure, and then it cuts to Thomas Parker's eyes pupil. But my point is, they throw all the symbolism in here of this descending alien savior. It's, again, tied in with the symbol of the Phoenix and the resurrected Christ. Very fascinating. But there's quite a lot in here when you get into the symbolism of the story. You have, again, the needle injection resurrects the fallen king. Lots of crowns throughout the movie. Lots of references to this, quote, rock of eternity, among other things. Very conspicuous bits of symbolism here, though. A lot of it having to do with this idea of a rocket ship and the so-called rock of eternity. Interesting all around. I have a few things about the movie on my newsletter. And I also pointed this out. How, when the movie came out, if you went to the Drudge Report on 624, you would have seen Elvis on the left, and on the right, some bird brought back from extinction. This is in Japan. And the article says, modern phoenix. So you have Elvis, again, associated with the phoenix. You have the modern phoenix. And then you have stunning image shows, cross still standing after fire rips through Texas church. So all on one page, you have multiple references to the burning man, the phoenix, the Christ, and of course the resurrection post flames. After burning down, the phoenix resurrects. These are all synonymous symbols. I'm just saying it's more examples of how they create these impressions. Now, I don't want to say it's a terrible movie, but they put the guy in a fat suit at the end. That was just too much for me. I got up out of my seat at that point. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. See a lot of interesting comments. Again, if anybody wants to call in and comment on anything we're discussing here, feel free. I did try to set up an interview with one of our trolls, but they kind of moved on. They didn't want to spend an hour on the phone with me for some reason. Some people prefer to stay in the, peanut gallery where it's safer. So, no problem there, no issue. We're not in the practice of banning people. Okay, now check this out. This is kind of interesting. Tom Hanks, so he was in the Elvis movie. He played Thomas Parker, this devil-like character. Tom Hanks appeared to suffer from hand tremors while promoting the Elvis movie in a viral video, which has now been shared by Daily Mail. So his hands are shaking. I'm like, that's intriguing, because if you recall, in Saving Private Ryan, one of the characteristics of Captain Miller, Tom Hanks, is intense anxiety causing his hands to shake. So, shaky hands in real life now. Just another example of this blending of real life and movie characters, and I think all of it is about keeping the public confused. I think it's about confusion more than anything. Okay, so let's go ahead and check out the Twitter feed here. I'm on Real Tim Osmond, if you want to follow me on Twitter. Okay, so the false flag fallacy, this is the Auto Hoax 101. I put a link below. So what I've done is I've put together a lot of important ideas, I think, with regard to what we're actually saying. Because it's very easy. For some reason, some people are quick to just denounce our assessment as you're just calling it fake and ignoring it, or you're just calling everything fake. And that is a total mischaracterization. There's actually a bit of nuance here. And what's more, we're not refusing to know things. We're not in denial about things that are real. If anything, we're more informed. We're just making a distinction between what we know and what we've been told to believe. And when we're attempting to find out more about a story, we have to go through sources beyond what is provided to us, which means we tend to know more and have more information that's been verified than people who just choose to go with what they've been told. So, my point being, there's more to this concept of, quote, auto-hoaxing and really challenging media narratives than being just dismissive. Alright, let us continue. Phones are open, 833-311-1984. Let me see if I have any voicemails before we get much further. On the screen, that is not Kurt Cobain, that is Greta Thunberg. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what is up with her and Kyle. They're equally annoying. They're perfectly, diametrically opposed to one another. It's too perfect that they have the same birthdays. It is too perfect. More evidence, I would say, in the more evidence leading me to conclude that the elite are really all about this moonchild thing, where they're really particular about conception dates and having the babies born on certain dates. It has to do with incarnating astrological forces. Okay, so should I play a clip here? I didn't want to get into this. But the reaction to Roe v. Wade, and the reason why this is important is we've been talking about this Kraken thing and how Stranger Things had a subtext of the youth being targeted by some killer the adults weren't quite grasping. had the subtext involving, the main storyline was PTSD, undiagnosed, America's undiagnosed mental health problem, the Second Amendment personified as a monster killing the children, a David Hogg-like character getting everybody to rise up, and of course the Demogorgon being released by the Russians, and the portal opening the Watergate on 11/6 or 6/11. Same with the Batman movie. Gotham gets flooded 11/6 or 6/11. These are almost interchangeable. But the thing is, the Kraken, I've been saying, represents the collectivism and the masses being turned into some big superorganism, and then basically this is the Kraken that breaks everything. So interestingly enough, on 6/11, which is a day pointed at as significant with this in regard to all of this, the March for Our Lives is there giving some occult pledge to avoid school, if there's still guns. But clearly, if you look at the symbolism, the all-seeing eye, just the ominous nature of it all, they were pledging to avoid, likely having to do with the void, the abyss, bottomless pit, wherever the Kraken is coming from, whatever they're invoking, it's coming from the void. And that day you had in the news all kinds of stories about a newly discovered black hole, dead star, the void. So my point being, I don't see these things as disconnected. That day you had the 33, misreported as 33 members of the Patriot Front in the town where the Aryan Nation has its headquarters. So you see the U-Haul open, the gate open, and they come out. And then while the pledge is being given there in D.C. in front of the big obelisk by the March for Our Lives people, there's an advertisement on the screen for a documentary on CNN called Watergate. Watergate is also a thing in Stranger Things, which has the subtext of the youth marching against the Second Amendment, the David Hogg-esque character. David Hogg was there when everyone was giving their pledge to avoid. So again, I'm suggesting you were looking at the rousing of Leviathan, the Kraken, and on both sides of the spectrum, you have the representation. And when they were giving the pledge, the guy delivering the pledge, whose son's name was Joaquin, which has some interesting connotations there, he said it's time for payback. So they're giving the mob permission to pay the other side back. And then, of course, you had, prior to the leak at the Supreme Court, you had a guy named Bruce Wayne, or Wynn Bruce, which is a very Batman-y name, Bruce Wayne, Wynn Bruce, and he sets himself on fire in front of the Supreme Court. I'm like, wait, that's got to mean something, because it's the bat as Phoenix. And if you remember, the bat as Phoenix was used as a symbol throughout the Batman movies. And what's more, the COVID, which was the Phoenix, the burning down before they can build back better, was kicked off by, of course, bat soup. So the catalyst for the Phoenix, for the reset, was in fact the bat. So it's very significant that we have another bat Phoenix, a guy named Wynn Bruce, setting himself on fire in front of the Supreme Court. He burned to death. Now, I'm like, okay, this has got to imply something similar to the Batman movie, Joaquin Phoenix. All these movies have strong examples of predictive and even concurrent programming. In this case, though, Wynn Bruce sets himself on fire outside the Supreme Court. So you have this guy on fire, and then, of course, the leaks at the Supreme Court. So you have the fire, the leaks, and now the angry people hitting the streets, the Kraken being released. So that's where I'm coming from when I'm pointing out that this woman here represents the energy that they have evoked.
It's alright. It's alright, I feel that way too. It's alright. We feel that way together, okay? Let it out. Let it out.
Okay, and it goes on for minutes. It goes on and on and on. And this is just one example of this letting go of inhibitions. This is the Kraken, I'm saying. And it's not just women. I'm saying on both sides, they're going to be releasing this Kraken. And that's where you have the right wing, of course, ganging up and going after the other side. They turned this on. They released this. They opened the Watergate. They opened the floodgates. So now we're just watching to see what comes up. Alright, so let us continue through your comments before I get much further. Rylo05 said, why did Hogg look like Elvis? Oh yes, there's quite a lot to delve into if you want to go into that event. I mean, suffice to say, anytime you see big mobs gathered around that big obelisk, it's some kind of ritual to the god of the world. Busy Lee Peanutman says, Timmy's the only one hinting at truth, listen to him. It's true, because it's not really about knowing the truth or knowing what is said to be true by this or that expert. but it's about knowing how to discern for yourself. You have to be your own media. And that's what Auto-Hoaxology 101 is also about. Linked below. Celestial Wonders has joined us, says hi or howdy, Penguinati. Yep, rip ears. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, everyone. I turned it lower even. I turned it lower. But yeah, that was rough. And look, that's not the worst. And again, I'm just pointing out that what we're seeing here is the release of a lot of resentment. I mean, look, 50 years, think about that too. So think about this in context. We're about to reach July 4th, and it was July 4th, 1776, when Pluto, or Hades, god of the underworld, but that planet was where it is right now. Where it's going to be on July 4th. I mean, this is a very important bit of astrological timing, because Pluto's return is associated with the downfall, the breaking apart of empires. So, July 4th, 1776, Pluto was at the point where it reached on 2/2/2022, this big Kraken release date. So, I've been saying we're going to see the Kraken being released. And if you look at the Dawn Day 2 event, it really decoded much of what we're seeing. Part of it involves blackouts and floods, some kind of helter-skelter situation. But it all looks very ominous, to be honest. But the idea of the Kraken being released has been implied, really since then. And so, I'm like, well, where is this going to be manifested? It's going to be some kind of, I guess, permission given for the different sides to let loose and let everything burn down, or something like that. Which is what it looks like. Again, things couldn't be more diametrically opposed. Okay, and now the Karen thing, yes, somebody here remarks that it was some kind of denigration of middle-aged straight white women. Yeah, I recall that. I remember there were different things where they were characterizing certain women as Karens, and apparently this is an older phenomenon, and it actually ties back to the idea of privilege, and I believe Emmett Till being basically killed because of a Karen saying something. So it has a deeper history, but the timing of Karen surfacing with Kraken, I think, is very significant. Very, very significant. Again, we're talking about, really about politics, but not just politics as usual, because politics being tied into this ritualistic return of Pluto. And of course, everything about the elite, if you've noticed, is timed astrologically. That's how we know that what we're talking about is truly based on a script. I use the various terms, but it is undeniable that the Great Reset was timed with the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction on a winter solstice, which hasn't happened since Jesus was born. So it's year zero. And speaking of which, I'm watching that Man in a High Castle, and it does involve a reset situation. Setting the clocks to year zero. Burning the old histories. It's about the Nazis winning, but they bring up a lot of stuff that's relevant to right now. But anyway, yeah, I'm looking forward to this July 4th and this Kraken being released. I think this is somehow going to be a combination of 2020 and something much worse. I'm looking at 1977.
It's gonna be a white woman that's gonna go off and kill everybody in somewhere. That's what's gonna happen.
At a minimum.
White women about to lose it.
Okay, let's see here. Infinite Muse says, cry pillows needed. Sure. Well, look, I don't want to disparage people for having emotions, but when you
next
cry
mass shooter's gonna be a white
on
woman.
Instagram, when you do a selfie with a tear running down your face, you're making a public scene about it and you're opening criticism. And I've seen a lot of virtue signaling today. And, well, all the time. That's pretty much all we see. Where was her mask? Okay, so let us continue. Going through our minds.com again. Minds.com/Infinite Plane Society is where I put a lot of the important information. The CIA owns everyone of any significance in the major media. Deception is a state of mind and the mind of the state. These are just random quotes from people in the intelligence agencies. We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false. William Casey. So yeah, look at this. I mean, this is just the world that we're in right now. Climate change is now a cause of death. The first climate change death, Canadian patient, first in the world to be diagnosed with climate change. Do you remember patient 0 for COVID? This is patient 0 for climate change. And these are overlapping agendas. I would even say that COVID was used to fast-track the climate change lockdowns to come. So you got misinformation kills, and now climate change kills. And people believe it. Look at this quote from Twitter. He says, if you don't believe people are suffering and dying from climate change, then something is wrong with you. Right. Again, we're questioning the existence of their angry God. And so this guy got killed by, not the weather, you. You did this. You didn't recycle enough. You didn't pay enough on your carbon taxes. So now we have climate change deaths. I also want to point this out, just a bit of hypocrisy, but I guess it's human nature to DFIR leaders. So if you look on the left, you got Zelensky and Ben Stiller. Both of them look ready to chest feed each other. And I'm just pointing out that they're wearing tight shirts. I don't know who started this style of tight polos, Epstein, but whatever it is, these two guys are trying to convey strength, that they're tough. They're beating Russia as a bully. So I ignored the whole thing for the most part. It's a terrible movie. I think the guy got an Emmy, didn't he? But you have these Hollywood people meeting with this guy. And by the way, when Tom Cruise met with him, Tom Cruise was like 6 feet tall. Like, something was off with the height. He made Tom Cruise look tall. But you can laugh and say the libs love to worship their celebrity leaders. But then look on the right. On the right side of the screen, there's Donald Trump's head with a beard, which I don't even know if he's ever had facial hair. But here he is with a full beard, and he's wearing a Superman costume with a T on it. President Trump making America great again. I've seen Trump's head on the body of Rocky Balboa, Thor, pretty much the same thing. Both sides worship their leaders. These are their gods. By the way, global warming turns 34, I think today. Let me double check. And this is significant because the Twin Towers were 33 when they pulled them. Yeah, June 24th. So global warming is now 34. It's already past the 33-year mark. It was getting kind of ominous. Because, you know, in the Batman movie, they flood the poles, 11/6. Okay, that's interesting. In real life, the GOP's slogan since like October of 2021 has been "Flood the polls 2022." So there's been all this talk of flooding the polls, and then Watergate, and the Kraken. So I thought there's something coming up here. And then climate change, 33 years. Are they going to somehow flood the poles, ice caps melt? Are they going to somehow simulate or affect the appearance of climate change and have the greatest "I told you so" moment of all time? But we passed the 33-year mark, so I think we might be safe. Okay, happy birthday 737. If you want to say hi in our Discord server, we have a lot of meme techs who tend to churn out birthday cards when people are in the server. Okay, so when did global warming become climate change? When people realized the Earth wasn't getting warmer. And I agree with Zareth. He says climate is how recent society is described. Climate and public opinion. I think that's the case. I think you're right. Molly Rowland says Ben Stiller, is he a eunuch? Oh, are you saying is he? Yeah, look, there's a lot of weird theories out there. These celebrities are all the opposite of what they appear. I don't know how much of it is misinformation. Does it even matter? Kind of, yeah. I mean, I guess the question is, you know, how deceived are we? You know, how literal are we to take them as some of their symbolism, which involves the worship of Baphomet, or the androgynous Freemasonry, Horus, the androgen child that's supposed to take over as the main deity from patriarchal Osiris. So, I don't know. I don't think Ben Stiller's a woman, but, you know, people are welcome to their conjecture. I'm looking for more evidence, though. More evidence. What have they been doing at CERN lately, says Jim West. Mandela affecting, I think, a segment of the population. I think they've been screwing with our logos and labels and catchphrases just to gaslight us. The wizards of CERN. I know on July 5th, they're cranking it up. And by the way, July 3rd is Tom Cruise's birthday, and it's the first day of the dog days of summer. And I believe the dog days of summer refer to the time when Sirius, the dog star, that everybody worships on New Year's without knowing it. See, it reaches its highest point at midnight on New Year's. So then it falls. So the ball drop, you count down, you make your wishes or whatever, your resolutions. You're drawing down the energies of Sirius, the dog star, the Masons worship. The star that fell in front of Truman and caused him to wake up to the deception, to the illusion. It's like the star of an initiation. But there's some great significance attached to the days where it's behind the sun. It's magnifying the power of the sun. There's some kind of connection there to the occultists with these dog days. And also, speaking of floods, one of the reasons why they call it the dog star, it's said, is that the dog warns of impending danger. And the dog star's position lets you know of the annual flooding of the Nile. So there is an association with the dog star and floods. So that also might be something that we're seeing right now. And the flood can take many forms. Some have said it could be within economics, flooding of currency, flooding of people out into the streets, any number of. There's a Lush flood, regardless. And Lush, if you didn't know, I heard that from human actually the Twitter account. Human vibrations. But this term, loosh, is the idea of there's some kind of energy being extracted from all the matrix batteries who don't know about the sun. And so if you're aware of it, you're less. It's almost like you're in an abusive relationship with a manipulative person, but that person is the mass media. And all they do is they feed off your gullibility. So here's a link to Human Vibration on Twitter, who I guess really woke up to this phenomenon with John Benet Ramsey, which was a huge loosh artist. I'll reach out and maybe have another conversation. I have a new podcast series I'm preparing to start, where I want to go into another topic that has been fringed unfairly. It's been lumped in with other things, but I want to get into the mechanics of what we would call magic and how it relates to media and mind control. But it's sort of a separate topic, and I want to go into detail. And I don't want to be unfocused. I want to have like one subject per podcast, so it'll probably be pre-recorded. I'm starting those any day now, but you'll be the first to know, obviously. Lee Dion says it could be a pocket of microgravity. Yeah, that could be. Like, the cosmonauts have this video where one of the guys drops a screw and hits the floor. And it's like, well, what happened? They say, silly flat earther, obviously microgravity pulled the screw down onto the floor. So here, how is the water staying in the mason jar while they're in the ISS in the Chinese space station? Well, obviously, I think that was microgravity. A pocket of it. I've been avoiding the news from the space station lately, just because they're so disgusting. But do you remember? Oh, they are. We can look, Astrocrete. So I was talking about Astrocrete a little while ago, which is this proposal for building infrastructure on the moon with blood.
What?
Astronaut blood mixed with the lunar regolith. So you got lunar dust and mud, blood, mud, bricks to build your lunar infrastructure. Like, it's just grotesque. But I'm like, well, there's got to be another reason here. Like, I think part of it is collectivism, sacrificing of yourself for the collective. Mm-hmm. So that's got to be part of it. Two, it's just the general ethos of Soylent Green. Right. Everybody's recyclable. Right. Hey, if you die, I'll just put you in the wood chipper, and then make some furniture. Right. Make some bricks. So I think it's all about recycling us, giving yourself for the collective. And then the other side of it is blood and soil is the other aspect to it, meaning that the first generation of lunar colonists will have a deep connection to the ground, and their children will as well. So if you look at blood and soil, this was actually a Nazi Germany nationalist slogan. And the idea was that you would have a nation defined by the people who were born there, who have a blood tie, who have some sort of ancestral connection to the geographical region. So blood and soil would seem to me to be, again, who founded NASA? I mean, who's behind it? Nazis, basically. Not an exaggeration. Werner von Braun, Nazi. Blood and soil. It seems like it's part of their big story, their big mission. And of course, tying you to this new land. So, my parents gave their blood so that we could live here. They suffered for us. So I think it's part of the big mind control and part of the long-term development of the human race as we're turned into a multi-planetary species. I mean, what a trauma bond. Zareth the Alchemist says that's how Adam was made. Oh, that's fascinating. You're right. And didn't Adam give birth to rib? These stories are intriguing. I don't understand Bible literalists who don't literally believe the other stories. Like, for example, I mean, what's the difference between a myth or mythology and theology? So, for example, Zeus is mad at Pandora because she opens the box and spills chaos in the world. So he floods the place. Like, how is that any different from any of these other myths where the first woman disobeys, releases evil, releases chaos, angry God floods? They're all the same. Okay, so let's move on. We were just talking about blood and soil having some interesting precedent here. And they're reintroducing it, though, with the astronauts in space. And where are the Americans being?
Hi, welcome to Taco Bell. What can I get for you?
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Can I get 2 Crunchy Tacos Supremes?
You said 2 Crunchy Taco Supreme?
Yes.
Alrighty.
And that's it. Thank you.
Of course. Any sauces?
No, ma'am.
Alright, so that comes to $4.85, unless you'd like to round up to $5 for students in their education.
No, ma'am.
Alrighty, $4.85, second window.
Thanks.
The space race last year to movie studios where the movie called The Challenge by the Russians beat Tom Cruise. So Tom Cruise, America's hero, America's Top Gun, lost the challenge to the Russians. Lost the space race. 1969 was being replayed in many ways in 2021. So I thought, that's very consistent with my overall read here. Because here you have Donald Trump gets into office, and before he does, there's these stories leaking about how he's been frequenting Russian brothels and asking for a golden shower. Now, I hate to even say this, but look, this is I'm gonna bring up a headline, so you can't say it's me saying this. I mean, there were stories that Trump was paying Russian, and again, Russian prostitutes. An alleged tape shows Donald Trump having Russian prostitutes urinate in the hotel bed. Okay, so it's really terrible. It's very terrible. So this is a real story. Now, while this is going on, Trump is in the Oval Office, and he's talking to Peg Whitson. She was the one who was the ISS commander who went around the Earth 666 days. So again, we're talking about, this is so insane, the space station and all these astronauts up there, and of all things, she decides to tell Donald Trump that she's drinking Russian recycled urine. And Trump is there talking to her about this, and just like, better you than me, is what he says. I'll pull it up on the screen. You got Trump and Ivanka, and you got the commander from the ISS on the screen. Again, it's like a kid with a snow cone. Like, she's proud of it. You know, she's happy. She's like, look at this, I'm drinking this recycled stuff. Now, the only reason I'm bringing this up is this is happening at the same time that Trump is being accused of having something with Russian urine. And I'm just saying, okay, there's too much here, and I'm getting the impression that this is some kind of insider sick joke. I'm not exactly sure. Other than, yeah, some kind of symbol that the Russians are going to win. And I think I've been vindicated. Super, super insane. Let me play a clip here.
Tell me, Mars, what do you see a timing for actually sending humans to Mars? Is there a schedule, and when would you see that happening?
Well, I think as your bill directed, it'll be approximately in the 2030s. As I mentioned, we actually are building hardware to test the new heavy launch vehicle, and this vehicle will take us further than we've ever been away from this planet. So, unfortunately, spaceflight takes a lot of time and money, so getting there will require some international cooperation to get it to be a planet-wide.
Now, one other thing to pay attention to is this is Peggy speaking. Again, she's been up there 666 days. They always make these real... I just think it's just some kind of bizarre humor. I mean, you don't want to look into the space news and all the sick puerile jokes they make about
For the work, and it's incredible.
a certain planet. Now, if you look at the screen, you'll notice, too, how they hang at these weird angles. So he's in 0G, supposedly. Why is his head vertical? Look at his spine. So if there's no gravity, if you could just free float, float anywhere, just like, you would be able to float upside down, presumably. But why is he fighting against Earth's gravity? There shouldn't be any. So that's a giveaway. You see this in many of these events, or I mean these scenes where they're basically, obviously, hanging from a cord, and it's given away. Okay, so let me see if I can find anything else useful about this particular clip. I didn't want to get into that topic too deep. I just wanted to point out here that there's all kinds of sick jokes being played on the public, and you wouldn't catch that as a joke. You wouldn't know it was a joke if you thought outer space was real. But, you know, you saw the Chinese space station with their, well, glass of, I guess, just water. Hopefully water. Just sort of sitting there. Alright, I'll play a few more seconds just so you know. This is, again, Donald Trump talking to the space station.
We're going to need to be able to close the life support system, and that means we, right now, for instance, are taking solar power that we collect and using it to break apart water into oxygen and hydrogen. The oxygen we breathe, of course, we use the hydrogen, combine it back with the CO2 that we take out of the air, and make more water. But water is such a precious resource up here that we also are cleaning up our urine and making it drinkable, and it's really not as bad as it sounds.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that. Better you than me.
So, there we go. Better you than me. They make a big point about it, so I wouldn't care too much to talk about that, but, you know, clearly that's a big point. You can talk to the president, bring that up. Peggy Whitson spent 666 days in space. Again, if this isn't real, if it's all just theater, if it's all just a 22-year blooper reel and the worst reality TV show ever, the worst mandatory science fiction, because you all have to watch it and believe it, especially if you're in school, why would they make this the date, the number of days? Peggy spent 666 days. Could that number have something to do with, I don't know, worship of the god of the earth? Baal worship. I would think that might be it. There's a link in the chat if you want to join the newsletter. Look, if you get in the newsletter, what I'll do is I will send the first chapter in the intro. Fallacy. False flag fallacy. I'm not going to say required reading, but I would say it's probably worth reading just to familiarize yourself with a couple of key concepts here. It has to do with why I categorize people as auto-believers versus auto-hoaxers with regard to how critical they are of the media they consume. Alright, going through your comments. Yeah, look, the ISS has terrible news lately. Apparently it's unsanitary. And I think they're preparing people for it to be, obviously, pulled down. Okay, from LA Mag, shall we play a game once more? Conspiracy Trollmaster Q returns. Yeah, Q is back. So all the opium addicts are back at it, totally empowered. It's amazing. It's like they all relapsed. All kinds of Kool-Aid addicts have relapsed. Man arrested for attempting murder after attacking LAPD flamethrower. So again, riots are happening. I saw the flamethrower. I saw the people blocking traffic. I'm like, you guys are blocking traffic on a very busy freeway, and you don't know how many people are on their way to the abortuary, and you're getting in the way of their abortion. So don't block the roads. 1 year after his death, John McAfee's corpse still being held by government fueling claims of a cover-up. So it's been a year, and John McAfee's corpse is still in the morgue. I don't know if he's already been autopsied or if they're waiting on an autopsy, but it kind of like, look, I thought the guy faked his death, and this kind of makes me think that maybe he didn't, because I don't know. Look, there's no reason to think he's alive. I looked at the new accounts on Telegram that they say are being run by him, and no, it's just nothing but recycled Q drops and Bible verses. A full-blown assault on Christianity, pro-abortion agitators attack preacher, rip his Bible to shreds. Looks like a psyop to me. Just some guy trying to get played this crisis actor. I'm calling this out as a crisis actor. If I was going to build a church and I was a preacher, I think that would be a great way, go confront a mob and preach to it. So he's probably intentionally getting himself into this if it's not a complete ruse. They love to look persecuted because it gives them street cred. It's a weird thing, this persecution complex. Internet neo-Nazis do it too. They're like, look, the evil gatekeeper is banning me from his chat. I'm being persecuted. I'm vindicated. I'm a victim. I'm like, no, you're not banned. You haven't been muted even. Okay. Pro-abortion protesters take up Los Angeles streets. Yeah, great group of people, very energized. Congresswoman Mary Miller thanks Trump for historic victory for white life. Yeah, that was a Freudian slip, I'm sure. But yes, you had Representative Mary Miller thank the president for saving white life. I think it was gaffe, but the media is running with it. Proof of something there. LAPD officer was beaten to death in a training exercise meant to simulate a mob. So this is fascinating. Here you have an LAPD officer killed by a fake mob. Dies during a simulation. It's like that's kind of noteworthy. I was looking at this hyper-realistic shooting drills, and you had a number of incidents and injuries and people getting shot with pellets. Just interesting here, though, a simulation actually killing someone. Probably real. We won't go back. Rapid response protests across the U.S. I like all the signage. It sure looks spontaneous. These things are definitely funded. It's just a question of what are they being paid to do. What are they being paid to do? And it's such a double standard. So we will see the double standard. The peaceful protesters. Okay, let me go ahead and go through the Twitter feed here. Again, it's at Real Tim Osman if you want to follow me there. We're just kind of listening to some videos. Again, the protesters are unhinged. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that. I think we all got our fill in 2020. You heard one mob, you hear the repetitive chants. It's mind-numbing. And if you read about cult mind control, that's actually a huge part of basically replacing the individual thought patterns with groupthink. The chanting, the repetition. Okay, I'll play this one. Someone here juxtaposed a group of protesters along with their animal world counterparts. So, 30 seconds.
I will not be stopped!
Join with us right now!
Not the judge, not the state, women must deserve their fate!
Opposing protesters and their animal, I guess you could say their spirit animals. Really. Okay, so let's see what else. Twitter crew showing their allegiance to Satan. It's either that or white power. Which is it? Well, I guess when it's over the eye, it's definitively satanic, because the all-seeing eye. Again, 666. Rooting the Dog says, Roe, Wade, both names linked by water. Interesting. Fish eggs equals Roe, and to wade through water, and then there was a leak. Yeah, great points. Watergate, Kraken being released. Again, it comes from the underworld. Pluto returns. Roe and Wade. There's definitely something. The Kraken is associated with water. The big Cthulhu, Point Nemo, Kraken, Hunt for Red October, nuclear submarine. It's all aquatic. And then I find out Godzilla's birthday is 11/3, which we will be celebrating here. We have our own version of Godzilla, sort of our new mascot, or in his final form. So if you've seen our penguin with the electric free energy wrench, some Tartarian tech there,
Right.
That's not the final form. You'll see it. You hear it whenever I get a super chat.
Need to make t-shirts.
Angst G says, protesters remind me of the 5G zombies from the 2016 movie Cell. What's the difference between remote controlling people with wireless devices to turn them into zombies, to burn cities down, and using social media to agitate people into burning their cities down?
Right.
There is no difference. You don't need a chip in your head for them to send messages to control your thoughts. I remember all these 5G phobes. They were like, oh, it's not the COVID killing people, it's 5G towers. And they're going to use the injected operating system, the goo, the black goo, to control you with the 5G towers and make you do what they want. And I'm like, no, people are already adopting the new religious headdress and the new holy water. They're covering themselves in hand sanitizer, social distancing, masking, locking down, quitting their jobs, all without the pokey, all without the injection. So it's like you don't need old stuff. They still are. It doesn't require towers and injected operating systems. You just gotta turn people into NPCs. NPCs are people who go with the program, who go with the scripts. When you're playing a video game, you're sort of the director. You're the character, but you're also the director of the game. You're in the controls.